Hello, my name is Beth Dixon, and I am the Math Lab Coordinator, and I am located in room 222 of the Math and Behavioral Social Science building. And today I wanted to give you a short lesson on finding the standard deviation and variance by hand. On the screen, you'll notice the formula for variance. There are two such formulas. This formula is the formula s squared equals the sum of x minus x bar squared over n times n minus 1. And this is the formula for variance. To find standard deviation, we simply take the square root. Now watch that go all over the place. So let's erase that so it looks better. We simply take the square root of the variance. So we find the top answer first, the variance, and then after we find the variance, we take the square root of that, and that will give us the standard deviation. So let's do an example together doing this by hand. To do this formula by hand, we want to organize our data into a table. Let's look at the data, and my data consists of four numbers: 8, 9, 12, and 15. Now, I'm keeping my data very small, only four numbers, and I'm keeping it pretty nice. This is going to give me some very nice numbers in all my columns and very nice numbers for my variance. And I did that on purpose for the example so that we weren't bogged down with a lot of cumbersome arithmetic. But your examples that you do will be a little bit more cumbersome, but it doesn't make the process any different. So what I'm really teaching here is the process. So when you do your problems, the numbers will be more difficult, but the process is the same. So let's look on how to design our table. When we do our table, we want to start out with our first column. Our first column is labeled X because that's our data. It's helpful to have our data in numerical order, although it's not absolutely necessary. You won't get the wrong answer, but it does make life easier if it is in numerical order. Numbers follow along a little easier and such as you do it. Now, as we look at this, the first thing we need to do as we look back at our formula is we'll notice that it says x minus x bar. What is x bar? Remember, x bar is the symbol for your mean. And that's the average. And if you look it up in your text, it'll give you a fancy formula that says sum x divided by n. Remember, that's just the sum of your first column. So let's go back to our table page. And what does that mean? Well, I want to add up this first column. 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 plus 9 is 15. 15 plus 8 is 15 plus, that's just something's wrong. I said something wrong there because it is not 15. 5 plus 7 is supposed to add up to be 44. It adds up to be 44. Now, isn't that just lovely? I'm not going to go back and re-record this podcast because we're just going to leave it there. It actually does add up to be 17 because 8 and 9 is 17 and 7 is 14. So 4 carry my 1, 2 because that's 27 and 2 is 44. Don't ask me where the other numbers were coming from. Something was going strange in my head. Just the way of life. But we get a sum, and if we wanted to be fancy there, we could even label that bottom column as the sum of the x's. Again, going back to this last screen to kind of keep up with our information. So that is, the sum of the x's is 44 divided by n. N is the number of items we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can count them on the screen. You see that there are 4 numbers. Going back here, 44 divided by 4 gives me 11. And I designed the data to have a nice even mean. So our mean is 11. And again, going back to our first one where our formula is, notice what our formula is. If we follow the order of operations on this formula, we want to do what's inside the parentheses first, remembering that the x represents the data. So we have x minus the mean. We want to take each of those numbers, 8, 9, 12, and 15, and subtract the mean. So I've got them in my table. So we want to take x minus the mean. And notice that's what I label that second column, x minus the mean. So I want to do 8 minus 11 and to get negative 3. I want to take 9 minus 11 and get negative 2. 12 minus 11 and get 1. 15 minus 11 and get 4. Now, we probably don't want to write all this work there because that's going to be a lot of work, especially if we can do the work in our calculator or in this case, even in our head. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase these out so that our table appears neater. You will either do it in your head or if you need to show the work, then just show your work there. I'm going to go back and write it in this column again, negative 3, 9 minus 11, negative 2, 12 minus 11, 1, 15 minus 11, 4. Going back to our formula again, let's look at what we have. The next part of the formula says x minus x bar, then that's what's inside the parentheses. Next order of operations is the squared. So we want to square that part of it. So the next part is x minus x bar squared. Well, these numbers in the second column are the difference. Now we just want to square those numbers. Be careful with your signs. If you use the calculator, you do need to put these numbers in parentheses because a negative 3 times a negative 3 should give me a positive 9. Negative 2 times negative 2 should give me a positive 4. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 times 4 is 16. Now, when we look at our formula, going right back to our formula page, that's x minus x bar squared. The symbol in front of it's what we need to do next, and it says to sum up each of those values. So looking at our table, see how easy it's going to be then to say 9 plus 4 is 13, plus 1 is 14, plus 16 is 30. So we're going to add up that column, and we get 30. So back to our formula, we've completed that top part of the formula. So I'm going to go back here to the last page, and again, rewrite my formula, sum of x minus x bar squared. And that's the sum of that last column, which is 30. And on the bottom, we divide by n minus 1. Well, n is the number of items we have, which is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. 30 divided by 3 is 10. So our variance is 10. Now that we found the variance, we can find the standard deviation. To find the standard deviation, remember, we take the square root of the variance which in this case is going to be the square root of 10. We'll use our calculator to do that, and if you'll trust me that I punched that in a little bit earlier, and I get 3.162. Now, depending on your teacher is how many decimal places you'll round that to. I rounded it to 3, but that is not necessarily a standard practice. Each teacher has a different rounding rule, so be sure to ask your teacher which rounding rule. Actually, also be sure to ask your teacher which formula to use. Not all teachers use this same formula. There are 2 different formulas, but if your teacher uses this formula, s squared equals the sum of x minus x bar squared over n minus 1, this is a good sample problem on how to find the standard deviation. I hope this was helpful, and if you have any additional questions, please come and see me in room 222 of the Math and Behavioral Social Science buildings. Thank you for watching.